Call your next witness. Judge, the government calls Ricky Fountain. All right. Right up here, sir. Please raise your right hand. Yes. Have a seat, please. Put a white cover over the mic, and then you can take your mask off. All right. You may proceed. Thank you. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Would you please state and spell your name slowly for the court reporter? Ricky Fountain, RICKYFOUNTAIN. How old are you, sir? 41. Sir, if you could move the mic a little closer or your chair, either one. 41. Do you have any nicknames that you've gone by in your life? Yes, sir. Pig. What city were you born in? Chicago, Illinois. Where at? Presbyterian Hospital. Generally, where were you born at? West Side. West Side of Chicago? Yes, sir. If you could tell us, what street corners or what area did you grow up in? Pulaski and Gladys, Pulaski and Jackson, all through that area. Is that on the west side of Chicago? Yes, sir. So, did you spend your early part of your life in the area of Pulaski and Gladys? Yes, sir. And then when you were 10, did you move to another area? Yes, sir. Where was that near? On Cicero. Near Cicero and Arthington? Yes, sir. Is that also on the west side of Chicago? Yes, sir. Did you attend high school? Yes, sir. Did you finish high school? No, sir. Did you drop out? Yes, sir. Now, it's true that you are a convicted felon, correct? Yes, sir. You have multiple convictions, correct? Yes, sir. Those convictions include, in summary, a 1999 manufacture and delivery of cocaine conviction? Yes, sir. Multiple convictions in 1999 for possession of controlled substances? Yes, sir. Correct? Yes, sir. 2002 manufacture and delivery of heroin conviction? Yes, sir. A 2002 bringing contraband into a jail conviction? Yes, something like that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 2004, I believe you had 2 convictions for possession of cannabis? Yes, sir. 2006, a possession of controlled substance conviction? Yes, sir. 2008, a possession of controlled substance conviction? Yes, sir. And you also had a conviction for attempted murder in case 10 CR 05797, correct? Yes, sir. Did you receive a sentence in that case? Yes, sir. Was that conviction from around 2013, 2014 when you were sentenced in that matter? Yes, sir. And what was your sentence in that matter, if you recall? 21 years. Now, you just walked into this courtroom, didn't you? Yes, sir. So you're not serving that sentence right now, is that correct? No, sir. After that sentence was entered in 2013 or 2014, and number 1, was that a state case, sir? Yes, sir. So after that sentence in case 10 CR 05797 was entered, did you go away to the Illinois Department of Corrections? Yes, sir. What happened with that sentence in that case? Was it vacated? Yes, sir. It got overturned from the Supreme Court. So the sentence and the conviction were vacated, sir? Yes, sir. And again, this was in the Illinois courts, correct? Yes, sir. Now, I want you to be clear. Your sentence being vacated, overturned, as you put it, in the state court, was that a benefit that you received from the federal government or from the U.S. Attorney's Office or from anybody here? No, sir. No, sir. Let's turn to your testimony today. Have you been granted something called immunity in exchange for your testimony today? Yes, sir. What, in summary, is your understanding of a grant of immunity? I can't be charged for what I say today. Do you understand that the testimony you give here, as you put it, you can't be used against you to incriminate you in a subsequent criminal proceeding? Do you understand that? Yes. Do you understand, however, that this does not mean that other evidence couldn't be used to prosecute you? Yes, sir. Do you understand that what it means, in short, is that your testimony and evidence derived from your testimony cannot be used against you? Do you understand that, Mr. Fountain? Yes, sir. Do you understand, however, that there are also limits to the grant of immunity? Yes, sir. Do you understand what happens if it's determined you lie while you're testifying today? Yes, sir. What happens if you lie? You get charged with perjury, locked up for perjury. And, sir, have you been promised anything else in exchange for your testimony today? No, sir. Let's go back to the neighborhood you first grew up in when you were about 13 or 14 years old. What was that neighborhood called, or where was that near? Pulaski. Now, you said you dropped out of school, correct? That's right. At or around the time you dropped out of school, or right before that, did you make a decision in your life to join a street gang? Yes, sir. What gang did you decide to join? The Four Corner Hustlers. How old were you? Probably about 12 years old or a little older. And what year would that have been? You're 41 now, so you were born in 80, sir? 79. 79? Yes, sir. So when you were about 1991, 1992, is that safe to say? Yes, sir. And you joined this gang. Tell us about joining the Four Corner Hustlers in the early 90s and how you did it. Just grew up in the area where it wasn't like no meeting or nothing like that. It was just grew up in the area where that's what was around you and that's what you became. Did you meet other Four Corner Hustlers when you became a member? Yes, sir. And what were your primary duties when you were 13 or 14 years old in the Four Corner Hustlers on the west side? I didn't have none. Did you do anything? No, sir. Did you sell anything? Yes, sir. What did you sell? Rocks. What are rocks? Cocaine. So as a 13, 14-year-old new Four Corner Hustler, your role was selling drugs? Yes, sir. And where did the money go for the drugs? To me and to the people I was working for. So to the Four Corner Hustlers? Yes, sir. Now, when you joined this gang, who were some of the people? Well, let me ask you first this. Were you a particular Four Corner hustler? Were you a faction? What were you when you joined? Nothing, just a Four Corner hustler, a member. Member? Yes, sir. I'm going to show you. Judge, may I have the ELMO, please? During your time in the Four Corner Hustlers in the 90s, did you ever meet this individual? I'm going to show you Government Exhibit 143, which has already been introduced in evidence. Yes, sir. Yes or no? Yes, sir. Okay. Who do you know that individual to be? His brother. Okay, when you say his, who are you referring to? Labar Spann. Now, you just brought up the name Labar Spann. Yes, sir. How do you know Labar Spann? From the neighborhood. Was Labar Spann part of a gang? Yes, sir. What gang? Four Corner Hustlers. Would you look around the courtroom? Do you see Mr. Spann in the courtroom today? Yes, sir. Would you describe an article of clothing that he's wearing? He got a blanket on with white mask on his face, gray hair. Your Honor, if the record could reflect that Mr. Fountain has identified Mr. Spann in court today. It will. Okay, let me direct your attention back to Government's Exhibit 143. You just said that that's his brother? Yes, sir. Okay, who, if you know, is depicted in the Government Exhibit 143? Momo. And Momo was Mr. Spann's brother? Yes, sir. How did you get to know Momo? Just from the neighborhood. Was Momo also a member of the Four Corner Hustlers? Yes, sir. Did you meet Momo in the 90s? Yes, sir. And how did you meet Mr. Spann, if you recall? He had a girl staying next door to some peoples I know on Jackson. And would that have been around sometime in the 90s that you met Mr. Spann? Yes, sir. And Mr. Spann was a member of the Four Corner Hustlers at that time? Yes, sir. Judge, it's not an objection. Can we clarify which Mr. Spann we're talking about? Fine. Why don't you do that? I will. You're looking at a picture of Government's Exhibit 143, okay? You identified it as Momo, and you said you met him in the 90s. Let's move on from Momo, and let's talk about Mr. Labar Spann. You met him in the 90s, and how did you meet Mr. Labar Spann in the 90s? I met him a few times early in the 90s, but just through the neighborhood, and he had a girl that stayed next to my peoples on Jackson. And during that time, was Mr. Spann, if you know, was he an active member of the Four Corner Hustlers? Yes, sir. In what area did Mr. Spann hang around in? Do you know? In the 90s. Pulaski. Pulaski and what? Lexington, Polk, Arthington. And what did Mr. Spann, if you know, do for the Four Corner Hustlers in the 90s? Kill. Did Mr. Spann do anything else for the Four Corner Hustlers? Shh. Act like he with them and take from them. Did he sell narcotics? A little bit. We'll get back to Mr. Spann in a few minutes. Let's talk about you. Late 90s. You said that when you joined in the 90s, you started selling drugs as a young kid. Uh-huh. By the late 90s, Were you still selling drugs for the Four Corner Hustlers? Yes, sir. So let's go to when you were about 15 or 16 years old. Where were you selling drugs and what drugs were you selling? On Cicero and Arthington. And what type of drugs? Crack cocaine, heroin sometimes. And you said this area was around Pulaski on Cicero? No, it was on Cicero and Arthington, a few blocks from Pulaski. Now, in that time period, why don't you just describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you did on a daily basis in the late 90s and what your day was like as a Four Corner hustler selling drugs. Can you do that for us, Mr. Fountain? You say explain to you what it was like? What it was like. What you did on an average day. Hung around in the area selling bags to customers. And what were in the bags? Crack cocaine. And who made up the bags? Me. Did you have people working for you? Later on, yes, sir. Let me take you specifically to the late 90s to the corner of Gladys and Pulaski. Are you familiar with that corner? Yes, sir. Is that on the west side of Chicago? Yes, sir. Who used to control, or who controlled that corner at some point in the 90s? Me? Well, I'll say Sean Ivy. Who is Sean Ivy? An older guy that used to sell drugs back in the day. Was he a Four Corner hustler? Yes, sir. And did you eventually take over that spot from Mr. Ivy in the late 90s? Yes, sir. And that was Gladys and Pulaski? Yes, sir. Between 1999 and approximately 2009, who controlled the drugs at Gladys and Pulaski? You say from what year, sir? From about approximately 1999 to 2009, who controlled the drugs at Gladys and Pulaski? Me, sir. What drugs were sold on that corner during that 10-year period? Crack cocaine and heroin. And how did you sell it? In bags? Yes, sir. Did you have workers for you? With you? Yeah, sometimes. Yes, sir. And who would bag the bags? Me. Where would you get the drugs from? Mexicans, anybody that had it, really. So the drugs weren't made in Chicago. They were shipped here? No, they came through the channels? I'm sorry. I didn't catch that. I'm sorry. The drugs you're talking about between 1999 and 2009 that you sold as a Four Corner hustler at Gladys and Pulaski, you said you got them from Mexicans and who else? Just older people that had weight in the area. What's weight? Large quantities or enough you can make some money off of. So you, at that point, 1999 and 2009, you're just selling drugs on a corner and you're not dealing weight at that time, correct? No, sir. But you were getting weight from other people so you could sell drugs, correct? Yes, sir. And you're still a member of the Four Corner Hustlers at that time, correct? Yes, sir. Now, in or around 2009, did your life change a little bit? Yes, sir.